We are counting down 15 DIing Victorian skills your great-grandmother used every day. Not museum pieces, but the work that ran from dawn to night in gaslit kitchens and crowded homes. By 1880, a working-class woman kept a family alive without modern comforts or rest. Mothers taught daughters. Most of it is gone now. This is what they did. Which skill mattered most? Let's begin at 15. Number 15, how to black-lead the kitchen range before the family was awake. Every Monday morning before the family woke, the kitchen range had to be brought back to life. Black-leading was the ritual of cleaning and protecting the iron stove with graphite, water and vinegar polished onto the metal until it shone. It prevented rust and showed pride in the household. Girls learned from a young age how to arrange newspaper, kindling and coal correctly, repeating the process until it became second nature. The smell of graphite and the sound of the first morning fire were familiar across Britain. By 14, a girl was expected to master the skill completely. A woman who could restore a range before sunrise was seen as capable, dependable, and employable, with skills that would always be valued. Number 14, how to light and trim a lamp so it did not smoke. Before electricity reached working-class homes, evenings began with preparing the lamp. Whether it burned paraffin or gas, it needed daily care. Each morning, the wick was carefully trimmed to prevent smoke, blackened ceilings, and weak light. Small scissors, kept only for this task, were used to cut and smooth the wick. The glass chimney covering the flame was washed daily with cold water and ammonia, then polished with newspaper. Even a small smudge could dim the light for the entire evening. Gas mantles were even more delicate. One careless touch could destroy them, and replacements were expensive for many families. A careful woman could make a mantle last for months, while a careless one might ruin several in a single week. Number 13, how to whiten the doorstep with a donkey stone. Before modern cleaning products, working-class families used donkey stones to scrub their front doorsteps each morning. These sandstone blocks, sold from horse-drawn carts, became symbols of respectability. A clean doorstep showed the neighborhood that a household remained disciplined, even during difficult times. The process was careful and repetitive. Women used cold water and rubbed the stone across the wet step in straight strokes, then wiped the surface until it shone in the morning light. The spotless step rarely stayed clean for long once muddy boots returned home. But the ritual still mattered. In many streets, women cleaned their doorsteps at the same time each day, creating rows of gleaming entrances that made entire neighborhoods appear orderly, proud, and untouched by hardship. Number 12, how to starch a Sunday collar so it would stand on its own. The Sunday collar was a symbol of respectability in working-class households. Detachable, white, and fastened with brass studs, it had to be perfectly cleaned and prepared every Saturday night for church the next morning. Women carefully mastered the process of starching. The starch mixture had to be exact. Too thick and the collar would crack. Too thin and it would collapse before the service ended. The collar was dipped, dried flat, and ironed repeatedly until stiff enough to stand upright. The smell of freshly starched fabric became a familiar memory for many men. A perfectly pressed Sunday collar represented more than cleanliness. It reflected discipline, care, and pride, showing that a family could maintain dignity despite the hardships of everyday working-class life. Number 11, how to do the washing on a Monday that took all day. Washing day in working-class homes began before sunrise. On Sunday night, laundry was sorted into piles: whites, colors, woolens, and heavy work clothes stained with coal dust or mortar. Each type required different treatment, and mistakes could ruin valuable clothing. By Monday morning, the copper, a large iron tub heated by a coal fire, was already boiling. White linens were cooked in hot water with washing soda, then lifted out with wooden tongs and scrubbed in a dolly tub using a heavy tool called a posser. After rinsing, clothes were blued with laundry blue to brighten the whites. The final stage was the mangle, a hand-cranked machine that squeezed out water and flattened the fabric. By the end of the day, women's arms ached from hours of labor, On Tuesday morning, washing lines hung heavy with clean sheets and clothes. Number 10. How to darn a stocking so the heel did not chafe. Wool stockings wore out quickly, especially at heels and toes. Replacing them was expensive. A new pair could cost a shilling, enough to feed a small family for a week, so they were repaired rather than replaced. Women used a wooden darning egg placed inside the stocking beneath the hole. Matching thread was woven carefully back and forth to rebuild the fabric. The real skill was making the repair nearly invisible and smooth enough to prevent discomfort. A rough seam or knot could cause painful blisters after long days of walking or working, sometimes even leading to infection. Skilled women could mend stockings so well that they lasted for years. It was a quiet but essential skill that saved money and helped working-class families through hard times without constant replacement costs. Number 9. How to make a poultice for a child with a chest cold. Before affordable healthcare existed, working-class families treated illnesses at home using remedies passed down through generations. A mother who knew how to make a poultice could ease a child's chest cold without calling a doctor. One common remedy used linseed soaked in boiling water to form a thick paste. Spread the paste on cloth and wrap it in a towel. Then place the warm poultice on the chest to ease breathing. The child often slept under the heat, while the mother stayed nearby through the night. Older women shared variations: mustard poultices for chest infections, onion for boils, and bread for splinters. This knowledge was rarely written down. It passed from neighbor to neighbor, forming a quiet network of care when medical help was too expensive. Number 8. How to preserve eggs in isinglass through the winter. Before refrigeration, families preserved eggs for winter when hens stopped laying. Without them, households lost an important ingredient for baking, puddings, and daily meals. One method used isinglass, a gelatin-like substance made from fish. Dissolved in water, it formed a clear liquid in which fresh, unwashed eggs were stored in stoneware crocks. The coating sealed the shells and kept air out, allowing eggs to last up to 9 months. Families preserved dozens of eggs in autumn while they were cheap, saving money during winter. Poorer households used water glass, a cheaper sodium silicate solution that worked in the same way. Eggs could taste slightly different on their own, but in cooking they were almost indistinguishable from fresh ones. These methods helped families stay fed through the year. Number 7. How to bake bread once a week that would keep until Friday. Bread was the foundation of every working-class meal. Families ate it at breakfast, packed it for factory lunches, and used it to stretch soups and gravies at supper. Buying several loaves each week was expensive. So many households baked their own. Most kept a sourdough starter in a stoneware jar near the kitchen range, feeding it with flour and water. On Saturday evening, it was mixed with flour, salt, lard, and warm water, then kneaded and left to rise overnight. Early Sunday morning, the dough was baked in the hot oven. By breakfast, the smell of fresh bread filled the house. The loaf had to last all week, so careful preparation was essential. A stale loaf too soon could mean hunger before payday. Number 6. How to pluck and dress a chicken for Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner was the most important meal of the week for many working-class families. After simple meals like bread and soup, Sunday offered something special, often a chicken bought live from the market and prepared at home. The bird was killed early Sunday morning and plucked while still warm, so the feathers came away easily. Boiling water helped loosen them, and all pin feathers were removed by hand. The chicken was cleaned, gutted, and useful parts like the liver and gizzard were saved for gravy. This was a normal skill learned by girls at a young age, and women who could do it quickly were respected. Sunday dinner represented hard work, care, and a rare moment of abundance at the end of the week. Number 5. How to nurse a sick child through the night. In Victorian Britain, childhood illness was a constant fear. Diseases like cholera, measles, scarlet fever, and diphtheria claimed many young lives, and most mothers had already experienced loss within their families. When a child became sick, the mother stayed awake through the night, watching every breath and checking fevers with the back of her hand. A kettle was kept warm for hot cloths, while older women shared quiet advice. Stay calm, speak gently, and hide fear from the child. If the fever broke, relief came silently in the kitchen. If it did not, mothers carried out the final duties themselves, washing and dressing the child before the undertaker arrived. This knowledge was rarely written down. It passed between generations of women who understood grief without words. Number 4, how to teach a daughter what could not be written down. For working-class girls in Victorian Britain, education did not end in a classroom. It happened in the home. While middle-class girls studied music, French, and literature, working-class daughters learned skills needed to keep a household alive. The lessons began young. By age 6, girls set tables. By age 10, they cooked, cleaned, and cared for younger children. By age 12, many could bake bread, clean a stove, and starch a collar. But the most important lessons were invisible. Girls learned how to stretch wages, deal with landlords and doctors, and manage family pressures. These lessons were passed through daily life, not by formal teaching. Mothers taught daughters patience, caution, and resilience. By marriage, many women carried practical knowledge far beyond what society expected. Number 3, how to enter mourning and leave it without breaking. When a husband died in Victorian Britain, his widow entered mourning immediately. Black clothing was worn from the first day, often covered with black crepe to symbolize grief. A widow remained in full mourning for a year and a day before moving into half mourning, with softer colors like gray or lavender. These customs were strict, and women who ignored them were judged. Yet grief varied. Some mourned deeply, others endured difficult marriages now ended. The black dress hid private emotions behind social expectation. Daily life continued. Children needed care, rent had to be paid, and food bought. Widows carried emotional and financial burdens alone. Other women in the neighborhood offered quiet support, sharing meals and help, knowing they too might face the same loss. Number 2, how to keep the household accounts in a notebook bought for a penny. By the 1880s, in many working-class households, the husband handed over most wages every Friday evening. From then on, managing survival became the wife's responsibility. Women tracked expenses in small notebooks, including rent, coal, groceries, clothing clubs, burial funds, and children's boots. Every penny mattered, and mistakes could mean hunger or no heating in winter. The real skill was in small economies. Women knew which butcher sold cheap cuts late in the day, which baker discounted stale bread, and which neighbors would trade goods or services. Good budgeting protected families, while debt could lead to collapse. Many husbands never understood how far wages were stretched. For some, a hidden account book was all that stood between a widow and the workhouse. Number 1, how to make a home that would outlast the work it took to build. The greatest skill of the Victorian working-class woman was not a single task, but holding a family together through hardship. She built a home that could survive poverty, illness, harsh winters, loss, and uncertainty. The home became the foundation of survival. A polished stove, fresh bread, carefully managed money, and children kept clean and fed were all part of unseen labor. None of it was glamorous, yet it created stability. For 40 years or more, many women worked without recognition, ensuring there was always warmth, food, and a place to return to. Sons came home from factories or war, daughters from service jobs, and the kitchen remained. Grandchildren often remembered them not through stories, but through small memories, bread, a kettle, or a clean apron. That quiet endurance was the real skill, and the reason families survived.